Tonight I am going to share 5 of the most disturbing true horror stories I have ever come across. These stories kept me awake for days. They made me check every corner of my house. They made me afraid to close my eyes at night. And I promise you by the end of this video you will feel the same way. I know what you are thinking. You are thinking this is just another scary story video. You are thinking nothing can really scare you. You have seen it all before. But trust me when I say you have never heard anything like what I am about to tell you. These stories are different. These stories are real. And the people in these stories wish more than anything that they were not. Story 1: The Night Shift That Never Ended. Let me take you back to the year 2019. There was a man named Marcus who lived in a small town in Ohio. Marcus was 28 years old. He had just lost his job at a factory that shut down without warning. He had bills to pay and rent coming due. He was desperate for work. Any work. That is when he found the job listing. Night security guard needed for old hospital building. No experience required. $300 per night. Cash payment. Must be comfortable working alone. $300 a night just to sit in an empty building. Marcus could not believe his luck. He applied right away and got a call back the same day. The man on the phone had a strange voice. Very flat and emotionless. He told Marcus to show up at the old St. Mary Hospital at 9 that night. The job was his if he wanted it. Marcus should have asked more questions. He should have wondered why the pay was so high for such an easy job. He should have looked up the history of that hospital before stepping foot inside. But Marcus needed the money, and desperation makes people ignore the warning signs. St. Mary Hospital had been closed for almost 6 years. It was a massive old building on the edge of town, 4 floors of empty rooms and dark hallways. The windows were boarded up. The parking lot was cracked and overgrown with weeds. A chain-link fence surrounded the property with signs that said no trespassing. But there was a gate left open for Marcus, and a single light on in the front office. Marcus parked his car and walked toward the entrance. The front doors were heavy and rusted. They groaned as he pushed them open. Inside, the smell hit him immediately. Dust and mold and something else underneath it all. Something sweet and wrong, like flowers left on a grave too long. A man was waiting for him in the lobby. He was old and thin with gray hair and eyes that never seemed to blink. He introduced himself as Mr. Carroll and said he was the property manager. He would show Marcus around and then leave him to his work. The tour was quick. Too quick. Mr. Carroll walked fast and did not explain much. He showed Marcus the security office on the first floor where the monitors were. He pointed out the flashlight and radio on the desk. He explained that Marcus needed to make rounds every 2 hours. Walk through each floor and make sure no homeless people or vandals had gotten inside. That was it. Simple job. But Marcus noticed something during the tour. Mr. Carroll never took them above the 2nd floor. When they passed the stairwell, Mr. Carroll walked a little faster. When Marcus asked about the 3rd and 4th floors, Mr. Carroll just said those areas were unstable and to avoid them if possible. If possible. Strange words to use. Mr. Carroll left at exactly 10 o'clock. Marcus watched his car pull out of the parking lot and disappear down the road. And then Marcus was alone. Completely alone in a building that could hold hundreds of people. A building that felt too quiet, too still, too much like something was holding its breath. The first few hours were boring. Marcus sat in the security office and watched the monitors. Most of them showed empty hallways and dark rooms. Nothing moved. Nothing happened. He played games on his phone and listened to music to pass the time. At midnight he did his first round. First floor was easy. Just offices and waiting rooms covered in dust and old paperwork. Second floor was patient rooms. Rows and rows of them. Each one empty. Each one exactly the same. Marcus shined his flashlight into every room and saw nothing but old beds and broken equipment. He did not go to the third floor. He remembered what Mr. Carroll said about it being unstable, and honestly the second floor was creepy enough. Marcus was happy to go back to the security office and sit down. But at 2 in the morning everything changed. Marcus was watching the monitors when he saw something move. It was quick, just a flash of white on the screen showing the second floor hallway. He leaned forward and stared at the monitor, but nothing was there. Just the same empty hallway he had walked through 2 hours ago. He told himself it was nothing, a glitch in the old system, maybe a moth flying past the camera, nothing to worry about. Then he saw it again. This time it was on a different monitor, the one showing the first floor near the main entrance. Something white moved across the screen and disappeared around a corner. It was too fast to see clearly, but Marcus was sure of one thing. It was shaped like a person. His heart started beating faster. Someone was in the building with him. Some homeless person or teenage kid exploring where they should not be. Marcus grabbed his flashlight and headed out to investigate. That was his job after all. Make sure no one was inside who was not supposed to be there. He walked to the first floor entrance where he had seen the movement. Nothing. He checked the nearby rooms. Empty. He walked the entire first floor, shining his light into every shadow. No one was there. Marcus went back to the security office and looked at the monitors again. Everything was still. Nothing moved. He started to relax. His mind was playing tricks on him. That was all. Old buildings made people see things that were not there. He was wrong. At exactly 3:15 in the morning, Marcus heard something that made his blood turn to ice. It came from somewhere above him, from the third floor, the floor he was told to avoid. It was the sound of a child laughing. Not a happy laugh, not the sound of a kid playing games. This laugh was wrong. It was too high-pitched and it went on for too long. It echoed through the empty building like something bouncing off the walls of a cave. Marcus sat frozen in his chair. The laughter continued for almost a minute. Then it stopped suddenly, like someone had pressed a button to turn it off. Silence rushed back in, and somehow that was worse. The silence felt heavy, expectant, like the building was waiting for Marcus to do something. He should have left. Right then and there he should have walked out the front door and never looked back. But Marcus thought about the $300. He thought about his rent and his bills and how hard it was to find work. He told himself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe the building had old speakers that sometimes turned on by themselves. Maybe there was a recording stuck in a loop somewhere. Maybe some animal got inside that sounded strange. There had to be an explanation. Marcus decided to go up to the third floor, just to check, just to prove to himself that nothing was wrong. He would take a quick look around and then go back to the security office. Easy. The stairwell was dark, darker than it should have been. Marcus' flashlight seemed weaker here, like the darkness was pushing back against the beam. He climbed the stairs slowly. Each step creaked under his weight. The sound echoed up and down the stairwell, making it impossible to tell if he was alone. He reached the third floor landing and stopped. The door to the floor was closed, but underneath the door Marcus could see something that made no sense. Light. A soft flickering light coming from somewhere on the third floor, like candles burning in the darkness. Marcus pushed the door open and stepped into the hallway. His flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing walls covered in peeling paint and a floor thick with dust. The air was colder up here, much colder than the floors below. His breath came out in white puffs. The flickering light was coming from down the hall, from a room near the end, room 313. Marcus walked toward it. He did not want to walk toward it. Every part of his brain was screaming at him to turn around and run, but his legs kept moving like they belonged to someone else. like something was pulling him forward against his will. The door to room 313 was open a few inches. The flickering light spilled out into the hallway. Marcus could hear something now, soft sounds coming from inside. It took him a moment to realize what he was hearing. Someone was humming. A children's song, the kind you would hear in a nursery. Simple and sweet and absolutely terrifying in this context. Marcus reached the door. His hand was shaking so badly the flashlight beam was dancing all over the walls. He pushed the door open and looked inside. The room was empty. No candles, no child, no source for the light or the humming, just an old hospital bed with torn sheets and a window with broken glass letting in the moonlight. But something was wrong with the bed. The sheets were pushed down like someone had just been lying there. And as Marcus watched, he saw something that stopped his heart. An indent in the mattress, right in the middle, like an invisible person was sitting there. And as he stared, the indent began to move, slowly shifting toward the edge of the bed, like whoever was sitting there was standing up. Marcus ran. He did not think. He did not plan. He just turned and ran as fast as his legs could carry him. Down the hallway, through the stairwell door, down the stairs 2 at a time. He burst onto the first floor and sprinted for the security office. He slammed the door behind him and locked it. Then he pushed the desk in front of the door for good measure. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. His lungs burned from running. His hands would not stop shaking. He looked at the security monitors, hoping to see that everything was normal, hoping to see empty hallways and still rooms. What he saw instead broke something inside him. On the monitor for the 3rd floor hallway there was a little girl. She was standing right in the middle of the screen, wearing a dirty hospital gown that hung off her thin frame. Her hair was long and black and covered most of her face, but Marcus could see her mouth. She was smiling. A wide, horrible smile that showed too many teeth. A smile that did not belong on a child's face. A smile that did not belong on anything human. And she was looking directly at the camera, directly at Marcus through the screen. As he watched, frozen in terror, the little girl raised one pale hand and waved. A slow, deliberate wave, like she knew he was watching. Like she wanted him to know that she could see him too. The monitor went to static. Marcus jumped back from the screens, his chest heaving. One by one the other monitors followed, each one turning to snow until the entire bank of screens showed nothing but static. The hissing sound filled the room like white noise. And then Marcus heard something else, something that made him want to curl up and hide like a child. Footsteps. Coming from the stairwell, getting closer to the 1st floor. Not running, not hurried, slow, steady footsteps, like whoever was making them had all the time in the world, like they knew exactly where Marcus was and they knew he could not escape. The footsteps reached the 1st floor. Marcus could hear them clearly now, coming down the hallway toward the security office, each step deliberate and patient. They stopped right outside the door. Marcus stared at the door handle. Every muscle in his body was locked tight. He could not move. He could not breathe. He could only watch and wait for whatever was going to happen next. The door handle did not move. But Marcus heard breathing, heavy wet breathing coming from the other side of the door. It sounded sick and wrong, like lungs that were full of water. Like something that should not be alive. And then a voice, a little girl's voice, sweet and innocent and absolutely terrifying. Marcus, why did you stop playing with me? I was having so much fun. Marcus did not answer, could not answer. His voice had abandoned him completely. I get so lonely up here. No one ever wants to play with me. The doctors left me all alone. They forgot about me, Marcus. They let me die all alone in the dark. The breathing got heavier. more ragged. But you found me. You came to my room. That means we are friends now, and friends play together forever. The door handle started to turn. Slowly, so slowly. Marcus watched it rotate as if in slow motion. The lock was engaged, but the handle kept turning anyway. The metal groaned in protest. Then it stopped. A long moment of silence. Marcus could still hear the breathing, but it was softer now, receding. Then the footsteps started again, walking away from the door, back down the hallway, back toward the stairs. Marcus did not move until the sun came up 4 hours later. He sat behind that desk with his back against the wall, and he did not close his eyes once. Every sound made him flinch. Every shadow seemed to move when he was not looking directly at it. When morning finally came, Marcus left that building and never went back. He did not collect his pay. He did not return the equipment. He just got in his car and drove away as fast as he could. But the story does not end there. Marcus could not let it go. He needed to understand what happened to him. He needed to know if it was real or if he had lost his mind. So he started researching the history of St. Mary Hospital. What he found kept him awake for weeks. 23 years ago, a little girl named Emily was admitted to the psychiatric ward on the 3rd floor. She was 8 years old. She had problems that the doctors could not fix. She would talk to people who were not there. She would laugh at things no one else could see. She would scream about monsters hiding in the walls. Her parents could not handle her anymore. They left her at the hospital and never came back. Emily stayed in room 313 for almost 2 years. The staff grew afraid of her. They said strange things happened around her. Equipment would malfunction. Lights would flicker. People would hear voices in empty rooms. One night the staff decided they had had enough. They locked Emily in her room and left her there. They told themselves they would check on her in the morning. They told themselves she would be fine. But they did not check on her in the morning, or the next day, or the day after that. Everyone assumed someone else was taking care of her. Everyone assumed she was someone else's responsibility. By the time someone finally opened the door to room 313, it was too late. Emily had died alone in the dark. No food, no water, no one to hear her cries for help. The official report said she died of dehydration and neglect, but the people who found her said something else. They said her face was frozen in an expression of pure terror, like she had seen something in those final hours that no child should ever see. The hospital covered it up, of course, paid off the right people, made the story go away, but they could not make Emily go away. Staff members started quitting without explanation. Patients reported seeing a little girl in their rooms at night. Security cameras captured things that could not be explained. The hospital closed 5 years later officially due to budget problems, but everyone who worked there knew the real reason. Marcus was not the first security guard to work at St. Mary Hospital. He was the 7th. The 6 guards before him had all quit after one night. Some of them refused to talk about why. Others told stories similar to what Marcus experienced. But here is the part that still haunts Marcus to this day. 3 months after he quit, he started seeing her, not at the hospital, at his apartment, in his rearview mirror when he was driving, standing at the edge of his vision in crowded places. A little girl with long black hair and a smile that showed too many teeth. She never gets closer. She never speaks to him anymore. She just watches, like she is waiting for something, like she is patient and has all the time in the world. Marcus moved to a different state last year, changed his name, changed his whole life. But he still sees her sometimes, always at night, always when he is alone, always smiling that horrible smile. Because some things do not let you go. Some things follow you forever. Some things decide you belong to them and there is nothing you can do about it. And Emily has decided that Marcus is her friend. Forever. Story 2, The Cabin Where Something Waited. Now I need to tell you about Sarah and David. They were a young married couple from Denver, Colorado. High school sweethearts who got married at 25 and spent the next 3 years building a life together. Good jobs. Nice apartment. The kind of comfortable life that most people dream about. But something was wrong between them. Not wrong in a big dramatic way. Wrong in the small quiet way that is sometimes worse. They had stopped talking like they used to. Stopped laughing together. Stopped really seeing each other. The spark that brought them together was fading and they could both feel it. That is why they decided to take a vacation. Just the two of them. No phones. No internet. No distractions. A week in a remote cabin in the mountains where they could reconnect and remember why they fell in love in the first place. They found the perfect place online. A small cabin surrounded by pine trees near a lake with crystal clear water. The photos showed a cozy living room with a stone fireplace. A rustic kitchen with everything they would need. 2 bedrooms with soft beds and thick blankets. Miles away from the nearest town. It looked like heaven. A peaceful escape from the stress of everyday life. They should have read the reviews more carefully. Sarah and David arrived at the cabin on a Friday afternoon in late October. The drive had taken almost 5 hours winding through mountain roads that got smaller and rougher as they went. The last 20 miles were on a dirt road that was barely wide enough for their car. When they finally reached the cabin, the sun was starting to set. The sky was painted in shades of orange and red, and the mountains were turning into dark shadows against the horizon. It was beautiful. The kind of beauty that makes you feel small and insignificant in the best possible way. The cabin was even better than the photos. Clean and well-maintained with everything they needed. David started a fire in the fireplace while Sarah unpacked their bags and put away the groceries they had brought. By the time darkness fell completely, they were sitting on the couch with glasses of wine watching the flames dance. It felt like the trip was already working. They talked more in that first evening than they had in months. Really talked. About their hopes and fears and dreams for the future. About the things they had been too busy or too scared to discuss. By midnight they were laughing together like they used to, like nothing had ever been wrong. David fell asleep on the couch around 1 in the morning. Sarah stayed up a little longer enjoying the peace and quiet. She read a book by the firelight and listened to the sounds of the forest outside. Wind in the trees. An owl calling somewhere in the distance. The soft crackle of the dying fire. That is when she heard it for the first time. Scratching. Coming from outside. From the front door. Like an animal trying to get in. Sarah put down her book and listened. The scratching continued for maybe 30 seconds and then stopped. She walked to the window next to the door and looked out. The porch light was on, casting a small circle of yellow light into the darkness, but she could not see anything. No animal, no movement, just the empty porch and the black forest beyond. She told herself it was probably a raccoon or a deer. Mountain animals were curious. They probably came to investigate new visitors all the time. Nothing to worry about. Sarah went back to the couch, but she could not focus on her book anymore. Something felt different. The cabin felt different. Colder somehow, even though the fire was still burning. And there was a feeling she could not shake. A feeling of being watched. She looked at David sleeping peacefully on the couch, his chest rising and falling with each breath. At least one of them was relaxed. Sarah glanced at the other window, the one on the far side of the living room, and her heart stopped. Someone was standing outside. Not something. Someone. A person. Standing just beyond the window looking in. At first Sarah thought it was a reflection, or a tree that happened to be shaped like a person, or her tired mind playing tricks after a long day of driving. She stared at the shape, trying to make it resolve into something normal, something explainable. Then it moved. The person outside shifted their weight from one foot to the other. Sarah could see them clearly now, tall and thin, wearing dark clothes, pressed up against the window, face close to the glass. But the face, oh God, the face. Sarah could not make out features. It was too dark. But she could see the shape of the face, and something about it was wrong. The proportions were off somehow. Like a person, but not quite. Like someone wearing a mask of a person's face and not getting it right. And then the shape smiled. A wide smile that seemed to stretch too far across the face. A smile with too many teeth. A smile that Sarah would see every time she closed her eyes for the rest of her life. The shape tapped on the window. 3 slow, deliberate taps. Sarah screamed. David jerked awake, instantly alert. What is it? What's wrong? Someone's outside. At the window. David grabbed the fireplace poker and ran to the window, but by the time he got there the shape was gone. Just empty darkness where the person had been standing. There's nothing there, Sarah. I saw someone. I swear I saw someone standing right there. David went to check. He put on his boots and grabbed a flashlight and went outside while Sarah watched from the window. He walked all around the cabin, shining his light into the trees. But he found nothing. No person. No footprints. No sign that anyone had been there. He came back inside and held Sarah while she shook. He told her it was okay. Probably just an animal that looked bigger than it was in the dark. The mind plays tricks when you are tired. Everything was fine. But Sarah knew what she saw. She knew it was not an animal, and she knew those 3 taps on the window meant something. Something she did not understand yet. They went to bed around 2 in the morning. David fell asleep quickly, but Sarah lay awake staring at the ceiling. Every sound made her flinch. Every creak of the old cabin made her hold her breath. She could not shake the feeling that whatever was outside was still out there, watching, waiting. She must have fallen asleep eventually because she woke up suddenly at 3:17 in the morning. She knew the exact time because she looked at her phone the moment her eyes opened. Something had woken her, some sound that did not fit with the normal noises of the cabin. Then she heard it again. Footsteps. Not outside, inside. Someone was walking through the living room. Sarah's blood turned to ice. David was asleep right next to her. She could hear his breathing, see his shape under the blankets in the dim light. So who was walking through their cabin? She grabbed David's arm and shook him awake. David, someone's inside. David sat up instantly. They both listened in the darkness. The footsteps continued, slow and careful, like whoever was making them was trying not to be heard. They moved across the living room toward the hallway, toward the bedroom. And then they stopped, right outside the bedroom door. Sarah and David stared at the door. The only light was the faint glow of David's phone on the nightstand. It cast strange shadows across the room, making everything look unfamiliar, making everything look wrong. They waited for the door handle to move, for whoever was outside to try and get in. But instead they heard something else. Knocking. 3 slow knocks on the bedroom door, the same rhythm as the taps on the window. Slow, deliberate, patient. "Who's there?" David called out. His voice shook despite his attempt to sound brave. No answer. David grabbed his phone to use as a flashlight. He crept toward the door while Sarah begged him not to open it. But David was stubborn. He needed to know who was in their cabin. He needed to face whatever this was. He reached for the door handle and pulled it open. The hallway was empty. Just darkness stretching toward the living room. No person. No intruder. Nothing. "There's no one here," David said. but his voice was uncertain now. He stepped into the hallway and shined his phone light around. Sarah got out of bed and followed close behind him, her hand gripping the back of his shirt. They walked through the hallway into the living room. The fire had died down to embers, giving off barely any light. Everything was still. Everything was quiet. Then David stopped so suddenly that Sarah walked into his back. "David, what is it?" He did not answer. He was staring at something across the room. Sarah followed his gaze and felt her legs go weak. The front door was wide open. They had locked it before going to bed. Sarah remembered checking it twice, but now it was standing wide open, letting in the cold mountain air. And standing on the porch just at the edge of the light were 3 figures. 3 tall shapes in dark clothes, all facing the cabin, all standing perfectly still, and all of them were smiling, those 2 wide smiles. For one endless moment nobody moved. Sarah and David stood frozen in the living room. The 3 figures stood frozen on the porch. The only sound was the wind blowing through the open door. Then the figures started walking toward them. Not running, walking, slow and steady, like they had all the time in the world, like they knew Sarah and David had nowhere to go. David slammed the door shut and locked it. Then he pushed the couch against it and a bookshelf against that. Sarah was crying now, unable to understand what was happening, unable to process the terror that was flooding her mind. They retreated to the bedroom and pushed the dresser against that door too. Then they huddled together on the bed and waited. The footsteps returned. Multiple footsteps now, coming through the door that David had just barricaded. They heard the couch scraping across the floor, heard the bookshelf topple over. Whatever was outside was inside now, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. The footsteps spread out. Sarah could hear them moving through the cabin, opening doors, checking rooms, looking for something, looking for them. The footsteps gathered outside the bedroom door. Sarah counted them in her head. 3 sets of footsteps, 3 figures, 3 smiles. Then the pounding started. Not knocking anymore, pounding, violent and loud and relentless. The door shook with each blow. The dresser started to slide across the floor. Sarah screamed. David shouted. Neither of them could do anything but hold each other and wait for the door to break. And then, as suddenly as it started, the pounding stopped. Silence. They heard the footsteps retreat, back through the cabin, out the front door. They heard the door close softly behind them. And then nothing, just the wind and the creaking of the old cabin and the pounding of their own hearts. They did not move until dawn, did not speak, did not sleep, just sat there in the bedroom holding each other and staring at the door. When the sun finally came up, David removed the dresser and opened the bedroom door. The cabin looked normal. The couch was back in its place. The bookshelf was standing upright. The front door was closed and locked. Like nothing had happened. But something had happened. Sarah knew it. David knew it. And they had proof. On the living room floor, arranged in a perfect triangle, were 3 small piles of dirt. Dark, rich dirt that smelled of decay. Grave dirt. They did not pack their bags. They did not even take their clothes. They just got in their car and drove away as fast as the mountain roads would allow. Sarah looked back only once as they drove away, just a quick glance in the side mirror. There was someone standing at the edge of the trees watching them leave, tall and thin with a smile that stretched too far. They made it home safely, but nothing was ever the same. David started having nightmares about figures standing at the foot of their bed watching them sleep. Sarah could not shake the feeling that they were being followed wherever they went. They moved to a different city 6 months later, changed their lives completely. But every night before Sarah falls asleep, she hears it. 3 knocks at the window. And she never ever looks. Story 3, The basement door. Let me tell you about Jake. He was 16 years old when this happened and now he is 32. But he still sleeps with the lights on. He still checks every door in his house before bed. And he still has not told his mother what he found in her basement. Jake's parents got divorced when he was 15. It was ugly and painful the way divorces usually are. When the dust settled, his mother got the house and Jake stayed with her. His father got an apartment downtown and Jake saw him every other weekend. The house was old, really old, built in the 1920s when the town was barely more than a few streets and a church. It had 3 stories if you counted the basement, which Jake did because the basement was the thing that always bothered him most about that house. Growing up, Jake was never allowed in the basement. His mother told him it was dangerous. Unstable floors, exposed electrical wires, old pipes that could burst at any time. She kept the basement door locked and the key hidden somewhere Jake could never find. But Jake was curious. What kid would not be? A locked door, a forbidden room, secrets that his mother would not share. It was like living in a mystery novel where he did not know the ending. When Jake turned 16, his mother started working night shifts at the hospital. She was a nurse and the night shift paid better. She would leave at 9 in the evening and not come back until 7 the next morning. That meant Jake had the house to himself for 10 hours every night. Most nights he did normal teenage stuff, video games, movies, staying up too late talking to friends online. But there was one night when he decided to finally satisfy his curiosity about the basement. He waited until his mother left for work. Then he started searching for the key. He looked in every drawer and cabinet, checked behind picture frames and under furniture. After almost an hour, he found it taped to the back of a bookshelf in his mother's bedroom. A small brass key covered in dust like it had not been touched in years. Jake went to the basement door in the kitchen. It was painted the same white as the walls and you could walk past it 100 times without noticing it was there. He put the key in the lock and turned it. The lock clicked open. Jake hesitated with his hand on the doorknob. Something felt wrong. The air around the door was colder than the rest of the kitchen, and there was a smell coming from underneath the door. Something musty and old and faintly sweet, like the smell of dead flowers. He told himself he was being stupid. It was just a basement. Every old house had a creepy basement. That did not mean anything was actually down there. He opened the door. A set of wooden stairs descended into darkness. The wood was old and warped and looked like it might collapse at any moment. There was no light switch on the wall that Jake could see, just the stairs going down into nothing. He grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and started his descent. Each step creaked under his weight. The sound echoed in the darkness below like the basement was much bigger than it should be. When he reached the bottom, Jake swung his flashlight around and felt his jaw drop. The basement was huge. It stretched under the entire house and maybe further. The ceiling was low, only about 6 feet high and supported by thick wooden beams. The floor was concrete but cracked in places with dirt showing through. The walls were made of old stone that glistened with moisture. Most of the basement was empty, just open space filled with dust and shadows. But in the far corner, Jake's flashlight found something that made his heart beat faster. A door. Not a regular door. This one was made of metal and it was set into the stone wall like it led somewhere underground. There was a padlock on it, but the padlock was hanging open like someone had recently unlocked it. Jake walked toward the door. His footsteps echoed on the concrete floor. The closer he got, the worse the smell became. That sweet rotten smell he had noticed at the top of the stairs. It was stronger here, much stronger. He removed the padlock and pulled the door open. The metal groaned in protest like it had not been moved in a very long time. Behind the door was a tunnel. Not a room, not a storage space. A tunnel, a long narrow passage carved into the earth. It stretched beyond the reach of Jake's flashlight, disappearing into total darkness. Jake stood at the entrance for a long time. He knew he should close the door and go back upstairs, lock the basement and pretend he never found this place. That was the smart thing to do, the safe thing. But Jake was 16 years old, and 16-year-olds are not known for making smart, safe decisions. He entered the tunnel. The air inside was cold, so cold that Jake could see his breath. The walls were rough stone and dirt with roots poking through in places. The smell was overwhelming now. Jake had to breathe through his mouth to keep from gagging. He walked for what felt like forever. The tunnel twisted and turned. Sometimes it got wider. Sometimes it got so narrow that Jake had to turn sideways to fit through. He lost all sense of direction. Could not tell if he was walking north or south or straight toward the center of the earth. And then the tunnel opened up. Jake found himself in an underground room, a chamber carved out of the rock with no other exits. His flashlight beam swept across the space, revealing stone walls and a dirt floor and something in the center that made him drop his flashlight in shock. Bones. Human bones. They were piled in the center of the room like offerings on an altar. Skulls and rib cages and leg bones and arm bones. Dozens of them. Maybe more. More bones than Jake could count. More bones than he wanted to count. He scrambled to pick up his flashlight. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely grip it. When he finally got the light steady again, he pointed it at the pile, trying to understand what he was seeing. That was when he noticed something else. Something behind the bones. Something pressed against the far wall of the chamber. Something big. Something alive. Jake heard it breathing, deep wet breaths that rattled in its throat. Like an animal, like something that had been living down here in the dark for a very long time. He could not see it clearly. It was staying in the shadows just beyond the reach of his flashlight, but he could see its eyes, 2 points of light reflecting his flashlight beam, watching him, studying him. The thing moved. Jake did not wait to see what it was. He turned and ran. He ran back through the tunnel, bouncing off the walls in his panic. He burst through the metal door and slammed it shut behind him. He fumbled with the padlock until it clicked closed. He ran up the basement stairs and slammed that door too, locked it with shaking hands. Then he sat down at the kitchen table and tried very hard not to throw up. He sat there for hours, staring at the basement door, listening for any sound that might mean something was coming up the stairs after him. But the house was silent. Whatever was down there, it was staying down there. His mother came home at 7 the next morning. She found Jake sitting at the kitchen table where she had left him the night before. He told her he could not sleep, told her he was feeling sick. He did not tell her about the basement, did not tell her about the tunnel or the bones or the thing in the dark. He did not know how to tell her, did not know if he could tell her. Part of him was not even sure it had really happened. But Jake knew it was real, and he knew he could never go near that basement again. For the next 3 weeks, Jake tried to forget what he had seen. He went to school, did his homework, pretended everything was normal. But every night when his mother left for work, he would sit in the living room and stare at the basement door, making sure it stayed closed, making sure nothing came out. Then one afternoon, Jake came home from school and knew immediately that something was wrong. The basement door was open. Not just unlocked, open, standing wide open like an invitation. And there were footprints on the kitchen floor, muddy footprints leading from the basement door through the kitchen and into the hallway. They went up the stairs toward the second floor, toward Jake's bedroom. The footprints were big. Much too big to be human, and they were not shaped like shoes or bare feet. They were shaped like something else, something with claws. Jake stood in the kitchen, frozen with fear. He could hear something moving upstairs, something big shuffling around in his bedroom. going through his things, looking at his life. He wanted to run. Every instinct in his body was telling him to turn around and leave and never come back. But this was his home, his room, his life. He could not just abandon it all. Jake grabbed a kitchen knife. It felt small and useless in his hand, but it was better than nothing. Then he started up the stairs. Each step took forever. The shuffling sounds from his bedroom continued. Whatever was up there, it did not seem to know Jake was home. Or maybe it did know and it just did not care. Jake reached the top of the stairs. His bedroom door was closed. The footprints led right up to it and disappeared underneath. Whatever had made them was in there, right on the other side of the door. Jake reached for the handle. His hand was shaking. His whole body was shaking. He turned the handle and pushed the door open. His bedroom was empty. But it was not the same. His things had been moved. His bed was pushed to the wrong wall. His clothes were scattered across the floor, and his pillow had something on it. A bone. A small bone, like a finger. Jake picked it up without thinking. It was cold and smooth and felt wrong in his hand. As he held it, he heard something that made him drop the bone and back away from the bed. A voice, coming from his closet, low and rough like gravel scraping together. "Found you." The closet door burst open. Jake did not see what came out, did not want to see. He just turned and ran, down the stairs, through the kitchen, out the front door. He did not stop running until he was 3 blocks away, standing in a neighbor's yard gasping for breath. He called his father from a payphone, told him there was someone in the house. His father called the police. When the cops arrived, they searched the whole house from top to bottom. They did not find anyone. But they found the basement door open, found the metal door at the end of the stairs hanging off its hinges, found the tunnel stretching into the darkness. They did not go into the tunnel, said it was too dangerous, said they would need to get a special team in to investigate. They told Jake and his mother to stay somewhere else for a few days while they figured out what to do. Jake stayed with his father. His mother went to a hotel. They never talked about what the police found in that basement, never talked about the tunnel or where it might lead. 2 weeks later, Jake's mother sold the house. The new owners demolished it and built something modern on the lot. Jake always hoped they sealed the tunnel, filled it with concrete, made sure nothing could ever get out again. But sometimes late at night, Jake wonders. He wonders what was living down there, how long it had been there, how many people it had taken over the years. And he wonders if it ever got out, if it is still out there somewhere walking around in the world, looking for him. Because it knows his face now. It went through his things, looked at his photos, learned who he is. And the worst part is Jake still does not know what it looks like, does not know what to watch for, does not know if the person sitting next to him on the bus or standing behind him in line might be the thing from the basement. All he knows is that somewhere out there something is hunting him, something patient, something old, something that has already killed dozens of people and left their bones in a pile underground. And one day it is going to find him again. Story 4: The Road That Goes Nowhere. This next story happened to a woman named Rachel. She was 27 years old, driving home from visiting her parents in rural Kansas. The drive should have taken 3 hours. It took her nearly 12, and by the end she was not the same person who started the journey. Rachel left her parents' house at 9 in the evening. She knew it was late to start driving, but she had work the next morning and did not want to take time off. The drive was easy anyway, mostly highway with a few back roads near the end. She had done it dozens of times before. The first 2 hours were normal. Light traffic that thinned out as she got further from the city. Clear skies with a bright moon. Good music on the radio. Rachel felt relaxed, happy. She was glad she had visited her parents, glad to be heading home to her apartment and her cat and her comfortable bed. Around 11:30 she turned onto County Road 7. It was a shortcut through farming country that knocked about 30 minutes off her drive. The road was old and poorly maintained with no streetlights and no houses for miles, but Rachel knew it well. She had driven it in all kinds of weather. Tonight the road felt different somehow. Rachel could not put her finger on what was wrong. The road looked the same as always. Empty fields on both sides stretching to the horizon. Old wooden fence posts lining the edges. The occasional barn or silo standing dark against the sky. Everything was familiar. But something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones. A wrongness that made her hands grip the steering wheel tighter. That made her check her mirrors more often than usual. That was when her radio started acting strange. First it was static, just a burst of white noise between songs. Then the music faded out completely and voices came through, whispering voices that she could not quite understand. They sounded like they were speaking another language, or like they were speaking English but backwards. Rachel turned off the radio, but the whispers continued. They were coming from inside the car. Rachel looked in her rearview mirror. The back seat was empty, just her gym bag and a sweater she had left there. But the whispers were definitely coming from back there. Multiple voices overlapping and tangling together. "Who's there?" Rachel asked. She felt stupid talking to an empty car, but she needed to say something, needed to break the silence that had settled around those whispers. No one answered. The whispers continued for a few more seconds and then faded away like a radio being tuned to a different station. Rachel gripped the steering wheel tighter. Her heart was pounding. She told herself it was nothing. Car electronics glitch sometimes. There was probably a logical explanation. That was when she saw the woman, standing on the side of the road, wearing a white dress that seemed to glow in the moonlight, facing the road like she was waiting for something. Rachel's first thought was that someone needed help. Maybe the woman's car broke down. Maybe she got lost. Rachel slowed down as she approached, ready to stop and offer assistance. But something made her hesitate. The woman was not moving, not waving for help, not looking at Rachel's approaching car. She was just standing there perfectly still facing the road. As Rachel got closer, her headlights lit up the woman more clearly. She could see the white dress was old-fashioned, like something from a different era. She could see the woman's hair was long and dark, hanging down her back. And she could see the woman's face. Or rather, she could not see the woman's face. Because the woman did not have one. Where there should have been eyes and a nose and a mouth, there was nothing. Just smooth pale skin stretched over the shape of a skull. Empty. Blank. Wrong. Rachel screamed and floored the gas pedal. Her car shot past the figure, going 60, then 70, then 80 miles per hour. She did not look back. Did not want to see if the thing was still standing there. Did not want to know if it was watching her drive away. But she had to look. She could not help herself. Her eyes went to the rearview mirror. The woman was gone from the side of the road. But she was not gone. She was behind Rachel's car. Running. Rachel could see her clearly in the red glow of her taillights. The woman in white was chasing her car. Her legs moved impossibly fast. Her dress flowed behind her like a flag in the wind. And her blank face was turned toward Rachel, watching her, hunting her. Rachel was going 90 miles per hour and the woman was gaining on her. She pushed her foot to the floor. The engine screamed in protest. The car shook like it was going to fall apart. 100 miles per hour. 110. The woman got closer, 20 feet behind her. Then 10. Then 5. Rachel could see her in the mirror, reaching out with pale hands. Reaching for the car. Reaching for her. She closed her eyes and braced for something to grab her, for the car to crash, for something terrible to happen. But nothing happened. Rachel opened her eyes. The woman was gone. The road behind her was empty, just darkness and moonlight and nothing else. She slowed down gradually. Her whole body was shaking. She was crying without realizing it, tears running down her face and onto her shirt. The whispers came back. Louder this time, not just in the back seat but all around her, inside her head, inside her chest, whispers that sounded like her name being called over and over again. Rachel pulled over to the side of the road. She could not drive like this, could not think, could barely breathe. She sat there with her hands on the steering wheel staring at nothing while the whispers continued. Then she heard something else, a tapping sound, coming from her window. Someone was standing next to her car. Rachel turned her head slowly. Every part of her did not want to look, did not want to see what was out there. It was the woman in white. She was right next to Rachel's window, her blank face pressed against the glass, her hands flat on the door, and even though she had no mouth, Rachel could see she was smiling. The glass between them seemed to disappear. Rachel could feel cold breath on her face, could smell something old and rotten. The woman leaned closer. The blank face filled Rachel's vision, and a voice spoke directly into her mind. "You're mine now," Rachel screamed. She threw the car into drive and stomped on the gas. The car lurched forward, tires spinning on the gravel. She did not look back, did not check her mirrors, just drove as fast as she could toward the highway, toward lights, toward people, toward safety. She made it to a gas station 20 minutes later, pulled in and sat there for almost 2 hours, shaking, crying, trying to convince herself that what happened was not real. When she finally got out of the car, she noticed something. Her back window had a crack in it, a long jagged crack running from one side to the other. It had not been there before. And on the trunk of her car were scratches, deep scratches like something with claws had tried to hold on. Rachel made it home that night, but she was not the same person who started the drive. Something had changed inside her. Something had broken. She sold her car the next week, could not stand to look at it, could not stand to sit where the woman had pressed her face against the glass. She tried to go back to normal life, tried to pretend nothing happened, but every night she had the same dream, the woman in white standing on the side of the road, running after her car, pressing her blank face against the window. "You're mine now." Rachel moved to a different state, changed her job, changed her whole life, but it did not help. Because sometimes when she is driving at night, she sees something in her rearview mirror, a flash of white, a figure standing on the side of the road. And sometimes when she is falling asleep, she hears whispers, her name being called over and over again. And sometimes in the middle of the night she wakes up and feels cold breath on her face, smells something old and rotten, hears a voice in her head. "Soon, soon you'll come back to me." Rachel knows that one day she will have to drive that road again, not because she wants to, because she has no choice. Something is pulling her back, something that will not let her go. And when she finally returns to County Road 7, the woman in white will be waiting, just like she has been waiting for all those years. Story 5, The Thing That Wore My Husband's Face. This last story is the one that scares me the most. I saved it for the end because I wanted you to be prepared. I wanted you to understand that sometimes the worst horrors are not the things hiding in abandoned buildings or haunted roads. Sometimes the worst horrors are the things that wear familiar faces, the things that pretend to be the people we love. This is Lisa's story. Lisa and Michael had been married for 7 years when it happened. They met in college, fell in love, got married right after graduation. built a life together that most people would envy. Nice house in the suburbs, good jobs, plans for children someday. The kind of comfortable, happy life that seems like it will last forever. Lisa thought she knew everything about her husband, his favorite foods, his weird habits, the way he laughed at his own jokes, the way he held her when she was sad. She knew him better than she knew herself. That is why she noticed immediately when something changed. It was a Tuesday night. Michael had been working late on a project with a deadline. He texted Lisa around 9 saying he would be home by 11. Normal stuff. Nothing unusual. At 11:15 Lisa heard his car pull into the driveway. She was in bed reading and she smiled when she heard the front door open, heard his footsteps in the hallway, heard him climbing the stairs toward their bedroom. Everything sounded right. But when Michael walked into the bedroom, Lisa knew something was wrong. He looked exactly like Michael. Same face, same body, same clothes he had been wearing that morning, same smile on his face when he saw her. "Hey honey, long day." Same voice. But his eyes were different. Lisa could not explain it at first. It was not like his eyes had changed color or shape. They were still brown, still the same size, still in the same place on his face. But there was something missing from them, something that should have been there but was not. A light, a warmth, a recognition that this was his wife. This was the woman he loved. His eyes looked at her like she was a stranger, like he was seeing her for the first time and trying to figure out who she was. "How was work?" Lisa asked. Her voice came out steady even though her heart was racing. "Fine, just fine." He smiled at her again. It was Michael's smile, the same shape, the same muscles moving in the same way. But it was wrong. There was no warmth behind it, no real emotion. It was like watching someone who had studied how to smile but did not really understand what smiling meant. Lisa watched him get ready for bed, watched him brush his teeth, change his clothes. Every action was correct. Every movement was what Michael would do, but there was something mechanical about it, something practiced. He got into bed next to her, laid down in his usual spot, closed his eyes. "I love you," he said. Michael always said that before they fell asleep. Every single night. It was their ritual, their routine. But tonight those 3 words sounded different. They sounded like a recording, like something Michael would say, not something he actually felt. Lisa lay awake in the darkness for hours. She could feel her husband's body next to her, feel his warmth, hear his breathing. But she was terrified of him. Around 2 in the morning she got up to go to the bathroom. She moved carefully, trying not to wake him, closed the bathroom door behind her, splashed cold water on her face. She was being ridiculous. This was Michael, her husband, the man she had been with for almost a decade. People had off days. That did not mean anything was seriously wrong. Then she heard something. Coming from the bedroom, laughter. Low, quiet laughter, like someone trying not to be heard. Lisa pressed her ear against the bathroom door. The laughter continued, and then talking. Michael's voice, but different, sharper, colder. "She doesn't know. She has no idea what's coming." Another voice answered, not Michael's voice. Something deeper. Something wrong. "Soon, soon she will see. Soon they all will." Lisa's blood turned to ice. She did not recognize that second voice, but it was coming from her bedroom, from right next to where Michael should be sleeping. She pushed the door open. The bedroom was empty. No, not empty. Michael was there, lying in bed, eyes closed, perfectly still, perfectly asleep, or perfectly pretending to be. Lisa did not sleep the rest of that night. She sat on the edge of the bed watching her husband's still form, listening to his breathing, wondering what she had really heard. The next morning Michael acted completely normal, made coffee, kissed her goodbye, went to work like nothing was wrong. But Lisa started watching him, really watching. And she started noticing things. Small things, things she would never have spotted if she was not looking. Michael always put 2 sugars in his coffee, always, for as long as Lisa had known him, but now he was putting in 3, and when she mentioned it he looked at her like he did not understand the question. Michael always called their dogs by their names, Max and Bella. He loved those dogs, but now he kept calling them the wrong names, Buddy, Spot, names they had never had. Michael always ate his salad with ranch dressing, but now he was using Italian, and when Lisa pointed it out he just shrugged and said he was trying something new. Little things, things that should not matter, but they added up into a picture that made Lisa feel sick. This was not her husband. Something was wearing her husband's face, moving through her house, sleeping in her bed, pretending to be the man she loved. Lisa did not know what to do. Who could she tell? What could she say? That her husband was not her husband anymore? That something had replaced him? She would sound insane. But she needed to know the truth. 2 weeks after that first night, Lisa called Michael's mother, just to check, just to see if she had noticed anything. "Have you talked to Michael lately?" Lisa asked. "Just yesterday." "Why? Is everything okay? Does he seem different to you?" Long pause. "Now that you mention it, when I called him he did not remember our conversation from last week. I asked him about the recipe he promised to send me and he had no idea what I was talking about. I thought he was just stressed." Lisa hung up. Her hands were shaking. Whatever was pretending to be Michael, it did not have his memories. It knew the basics, the routines, the surface level stuff, but it did not know the details, the little things that made Michael who he really was. Lisa decided to test it. That night at dinner she brought up their honeymoon, a trip to Mexico 7 years ago, the best week of their lives. "Remember that restaurant by the beach?" she said. "The one with the amazing food?" Michael smiled. "Of course. The Italian place. You loved the pasta." Wrong, wrong, wrong. They went to Mexico, not Italy. The restaurant was Mexican, and Michael loved the pasta, not her. This thing did not know, could not know, because it was not Michael. Lisa smiled back at him. "Yeah, that was great." But inside she was screaming, inside she was dying, inside she was planning what to do next. She had to know what happened to the real Michael, had to know what this thing was, where it came from, what it wanted. That night she pretended to fall asleep, kept her eyes barely open, watched Michael through her lashes. For hours nothing happened. He just lay there breathing steadily, eyes closed, body still. Then at exactly 3 in the morning he moved. Michael got out of bed, but his movement was wrong. His joints bent at angles they should not. His body flowed instead of walking, like something liquid pretending to be solid. He walked to the window and stood there staring out at the darkness. His silhouette against the moonlight looked wrong, too tall, too thin, too much like something that was not human. And then he started to change. Lisa watched in frozen horror as her husband's body transformed. His arms stretched longer, his fingers extended into claws, his back arched and twisted. And his face, oh God, his face. His face melted, shifted, became something else entirely. Something with too many eyes, something with too many teeth, something that no longer looked human in any way. It stood by the window in its true form, this monster that had been sleeping next to her for weeks, this thing that had been pretending to be the man she loved. Then it turned toward the bed, toward her. And even though its face was a nightmare of eyes and teeth, Lisa could tell it was smiling. "You're awake," it said, Michael's voice coming from that impossible face. "I was wondering how long you would pretend." Lisa ran. She threw off the covers and sprinted for the door. She did not look back, did not think, just ran with everything she had. Down the stairs, through the living room, out the front door, into the night. She ran to her neighbor's house and pounded on the door until they answered. She was hysterical, crying and screaming and barely able to speak. She told them someone broke into her house, told them to call the police. When the police arrived, they searched her house from top to bottom. Michael was gone. But they found something in the basement, hidden under old boxes and furniture in a corner no one ever went. They found Michael. The real Michael. He had been dead for weeks. His body was cold and stiff and his face was frozen in an expression of pure terror, like he had seen something horrible in his final moments, like he had died screaming. The medical examiner said he died the same night he texted Lisa saying he would be home late. Tuesday, 2 weeks ago. He had been dead the whole time. Which meant something had been living in Lisa's house for 2 weeks. Something had been eating her food, watching her sleep, pretending to be her husband, and it had been doing it all with his body hidden in the basement. The police never found out what happened. They ruled it as a murder by unknown persons. Case still open. No suspects. No leads. Lisa knows what happened, but she cannot tell anyone. Who would believe her? She moved across the country, changed her name, tried to build a new life. But she has never felt safe again, never trusted anyone the same way, because she knows now that the people we love can be replaced, taken, copied. And we might not notice until it is too late. Lisa still has nightmares about that night, about watching her husband transform into something that should not exist, about seeing that face full of eyes and teeth, about hearing Michael's voice coming from that monster. "You're awake." Sometimes when she is out in public she sees people she knows, friends from her old life, co-workers, neighbors, and she looks at them carefully, studies their eyes, watches for the small things that might be wrong. Because that thing is still out there. The police never found it, never caught it, never stopped it. It is still somewhere wearing someone else's face, living someone else's life, sleeping next to someone else in the dark. And Lisa knows that one day it might come back for her. Because it wore her husband's face for 2 weeks. It learned her routines, her habits, her fears. It knows her now. And the scariest part is she does not know what it looks like, does not know who it might be pretending to be, could be anyone, could be standing right behind her at any moment, could be watching her right now. You're awake. Closing. Those were 5 true stories that happened in the dead of night. 5 stories of normal people who encountered something they could not explain, something that changed their lives forever. I want to thank you for watching until the end. I know these stories were difficult to hear. They were even more difficult to research and write, but I believe they are important. Because the darkness is real, the things that hide in it are real, and the more we know about them, the better prepared we will be. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Have you ever experienced something in the dead of night? Something you could not explain? Something that still haunts you? I want to hear your stories. Leave them in the comments below. I read every single one, and your story might be featured in a future video. If you made it this far, please hit that subscribe button. I post new horror content every week. True stories, scary encounters, things that will make you afraid to turn off the lights. Remember what I said at the beginning. Do not watch this alone. Do not watch this in the dark. And whatever you do, do not assume you are safe. Because somewhere out there something is watching, something is waiting, something is patient. And one night it might decide that it wants you. Sleep tight, everyone. Or better yet, do not sleep at all.